For 30 years, one man ruled late-night television. Johnny Carson, the king of The Tonight Show. His sharp wit, boyish charm, and perfectly timed one-liners made him not just a host, but a cultural icon. Millions of Americans ended their day with Johnny, laughing, thinking, and sometimes tearing up as he turned simple interviews into unforgettable moments. But behind the lights, applause, and perfectly delivered jokes, there was something else: connection. Johnny had interviewed thousands of celebrities, from movie stars and politicians to comedians and musicians. Yet, there were only a handful who truly broke through his famously cool, guarded exterior. These were the people who made him laugh from the heart, who surprised him, who reminded him that even television's most unshakable host could be caught off guard. Because while Johnny was known for his smooth control of the room, the truth is, when he loved a guest, everyone could feel it. The smile was real. The laughter lasted longer. The conversations turned personal. And over the years, there were 10 guests who stood out above the rest. Some were comedy legends, some were rebels, some were quiet souls who somehow touched him deeply. But number seven was the one no one saw coming. Tonight, we're opening the curtain on the softer side of late-night royalty. The man who hid behind the laughter but never forgot the people who made his show and his life truly unforgettable. These are the 10 guests Johnny Carson loved the most, and the surprising stories behind them. When The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, first aired in 1962, no one, not even Carson himself, could have predicted that it would redefine late-night television forever. Johnny stepped into a role that few could handle. 300 nights a year of live interviews, unpredictable guests, and the responsibility of keeping millions of Americans entertained. Yet, somehow, he made it look effortless. But off-camera, Johnny was known to be reserved, even shy. He wasn't the kind of host who easily bonded with everyone who sat on that couch. To earn his genuine affection, a guest had to be more than just funny or famous. They had to be real, unpredictable, and capable of disarming the man behind the smile. One of the very first people to do that was Jack Benny, the legendary comedian who inspired much of Carson's timing and deadpan humor. When Benny appeared on The Tonight Show, Johnny wasn't just hosting a guest, he was sitting beside his idol. Jack's slow, deliberate delivery and razor-sharp wit made Johnny beam like a kid meeting his hero. Years later, Carson would call him the most generous performer I ever worked with. It wasn't about jokes. It was about respect, something Johnny valued more than laughter itself. Another guest who earned Johnny's genuine warmth early on was Dean Martin. Dean didn't care about the script or the format. He just wanted to have fun. He'd stroll on stage with a drink in hand, poke fun at Johnny's suits, and make the audience feel like they were part of an inside joke. That looseness, that unpredictable spark, made Johnny drop his guard. For a host who preferred control, Dean Martin's chaos was oddly refreshing. Dean could walk out and say nothing, Carson once said, and still be the most entertaining guy in the room. Then there was Lucille Ball, the queen of comedy herself. Every time Lucy visited, the entire mood of the studio shifted. She was fearless, loud, and completely unfiltered, the polar opposite of Johnny's controlled, cool demeanor. But that's what he loved about her. She reminded him that television wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. When Lucy teased Johnny, calling him Mr. Serious, the audience roared, and even Carson, who rarely lost his composure, blushed. As the years went on, a pattern emerged. The guests Johnny loved most weren't necessarily the biggest stars. They were the ones who could surprise him. Robin Williams, for example, was pure electricity every time he appeared. The moment Robin walked on stage, Johnny's shoulders relaxed, and his laughter became genuine. Williams would explode with energy, impersonating animals, politicians, and even Carson himself, while Johnny sat back, tears of laughter streaming down his face. "He's the only guy who ever made me forget I was hosting," Johnny later said. But there was also a softer side to the guests he cherished. When Jimmy Stewart appeared to recite a poem about his dog, the laughter faded into silence as Carson's eyes welled up. It was one of the rare times the unflappable host showed emotion on air. The moment became legendary, not because of the words, but because Johnny, for once, couldn't hide what he felt. After the show, he hugged Stewart backstage and whispered, "You broke me, old friend." And then there was Bette Midler, who appeared during Johnny's final week on The Tonight Show in 1992. Her rendition of "One for My Baby" left Johnny visibly moved. A perfect, bittersweet goodbye between two entertainers who understood each other completely. As the audience rose for a standing ovation, Johnny, his voice cracking, said, "You made this night unforgettable." For Carson, these weren't just guests. They were moments, human connections that pierced through decades of rehearsed smiles and scripted jokes. Every now and then, someone would make him forget about the cameras and the millions watching at home. And while many stars came and went, the ones Johnny loved most stayed with him, not just in his memory, but in the way they revealed his truest self. But out of the 10, there was one person whose appearance left the audience, and even Johnny himself, completely stunned. A guest no one expected him to connect with, and yet that meeting would become one of the most emotional moments in late-night history. By the 1970s, The Tonight Show wasn't just a television program, it was an American institution. Every major star, comedian, and politician wanted that seat across from Johnny Carson. Yet, few realized how carefully Johnny chose who he truly connected with. On screen, he was charming, quick, and always in control. Off-screen, he was quiet, thoughtful, and sometimes even lonely. So when someone broke through his cool exterior, it meant something. It meant he saw something real. One of the first people to do that during the show's golden era was Don Rickles, the man known for roasting everyone he met, including Johnny himself. When Rickles appeared, no one was safe. He'd mock Johnny's hair, his suits, even his delivery. The audience would howl, but what made it magic was Johnny's reaction. He loved it. For a man used to controlling the humor, Carson adored someone who could turn it around on him. Offstage, the two developed a friendship that lasted decades. Rickles later said, "Johnny laughed harder at himself than anyone else. That's why he was the best." Another guest who earned Johnny's affection was David Letterman. When Letterman was still a struggling comedian in the late 70s, Johnny saw something special in him. He recognized the same sarcasm and subtle intelligence that had once defined his own early career. Carson didn't just invite Letterman on the show, he mentored him, eventually making him the permanent guest host. "He believed in me when no one else did," Letterman later said. "Everything I have in television, I owe to Johnny Carson." But perhaps the most surprising guest Johnny connected with wasn't a comedian or actor. It was Betty White. Her charm and quick wit disarmed him completely. Whenever she appeared, the banter was effortless, almost flirtatious. Johnny would tease her, she'd fire right back, and the audience would roar. Behind the laughter, there was mutual respect. Carson once told his producers, "She's the best guest a host could ask for. Always sharp, never fake." Still, none of those names compared to the one that would shock the nation. Muhammad Ali. When the heavyweight champion appeared on The Tonight Show, people expected sparks. Ali was known for his confidence, his poetry, his bravado. Everything Johnny wasn't. But what happened that night stunned everyone. Instead of clashing, the two men connected like old friends. Johnny treated Ali not as a showman, but as a man, asking about his faith, his fears, and his life outside the ring. At one point, Ali said, "People think I'm loud because I'm proud, but sometimes I'm just scared like everyone else." For a moment, the studio went silent. Carson leaned in and said softly, "That's the most honest thing anyone's ever said on this show." It was real, raw, and unforgettable. Later, Johnny admitted that Ali was one of the few guests who made him forget the performance. That episode became one of his all-time favorites, and many believe Muhammad Ali was indeed that mysterious number 7, the guest no one expected him to love. Their connection revealed something profound. Beneath Johnny's humor and Ali's bravado were two men who understood what it meant to live under a spotlight and still crave something real. But Johnny's favorite guests weren't just those who entertained. They were the ones who brought out his humanity. Carl Sagan, the famed astrophysicist, was one of them. Sagan's calm explanations about the universe fascinated Carson. Johnny, a lifelong science enthusiast, would stay after the show just to talk with him about galaxies and black holes. "He made me feel like a kid again," Johnny once said. "Like there's still magic left in the world." Then there was Richard Pryor, whose brutal honesty about race, pain, and survival shook late-night television to its core. Carson respected him deeply, not only for his humor, but for his courage. "Richard made people laugh at things they didn't want to talk about," Johnny said. "That takes more bravery than any punchline." Through the years, Carson met hundreds of remarkable guests, but these were different. They